Uganda, good evening and welcome to this edition of the Hotseat on 933 KFM. I welcome you, our listeners, across this beautiful land, the Pearl of Africa. My name is Patrick Kamara. Tonight we look into the continuing political journey for Uganda, and there are some propositions that are being made. The Nile Post is reporting the Minister of Justice, Norbert Mao, has revealed plans to present a series of electoral reforms to the cabinet, which we will be convening. Among the proposed changes are a shift to a parliamentary system, which would remove the public's direct power to elect the president, and the introduction of term limits, among other adjustments. And these proposed reforms have sparked skepticism among political actors who question both their relevance and the motivations behind them. We'll be looking at this issue because I suppose this is big time. Let me introduce my panel this evening. From Uganda Management Institute, Professor Gerard Karija. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Good evening.
Pleasure to be here as always, and good evening to you all and to our listeners.
From the Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies, Mr. Godbert Mushabe. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Good evening.
Thank you, Patrick. Good evening to you and good evening our listeners. Very, very delighted to be back.
Yeah, I think this is the first time we're getting you since you went for UNA convention.
Yes, sure.
I understand you're really shining at the UNA. That you made a proposition to the UNA people and they want to come back to Uganda very soon.
Yeah, as reported by
Moses Biarhang. Yes.
No, we did the job that took us there. We had very, very, very enriching engagements with a number of. First of all, we have members of UNA who are members of Fortune 500 Club.
What is Fortune 500 Club?
Yeah, this is an investment club like no other, which focuses on aggregating money and making transformative investments in sectors that really Ugandans normally don't invest in. So we were engaging with our members. We were talking to some of the prospective members. We have, and it's quite enriching when you go to UNA and you meet Ugandans who are in North America, and you see the range of things they are doing, the range of sectors they are working in. Some of them even working in some of the county governments. It's really a rich reservoir of Ugandans.
Wow.
You really don't get a feeling that as a country we are really tapping into that reservoir for national development.
You know, sometimes when you're in debate, so especially on this table, you and Moses, sometimes you're on the different opposing aisle of the arguments, but I like it when you're in UNA and the marbled corridors of the America. Somehow you are really Ugandans. You talk together very well, and he also has very good views.
By the way, I think
he's listening online now. I'm yet to introduce him.
I rarely disagree with Moses when we're talking about Ugandan things. I think our disagreements normally is when he reduces his arguments to NRM, because I see Moses as an employee of the government of Uganda, the state of Uganda. The moment he behaves like a cadre of a political party, then of course then you really realize that we are at a different tangent, because as I've said time and again, I think NRM, that group, is basically part of the problem of this country.
Okay, so gentlemen, let's look into the debate of the day of tonight. The proposed reforms, which have sparked skepticism, and some people are questioning their relevance and the motivation. Let me begin with you, Professor Gerard Karija. The relevance of a parliamentary, system, or do you doubt, or you're skeptical about its relevance now and why it is being introduced now?
Well, this whole idea of the political reforms coming at this time, and whether the reforms are well intended or not, democracy is an ongoing experiment. And Uganda is a hybrid regime, just floating in between a parliamentary sovereignty and a presidential system, but largely tending towards the presidential system. Now, the question for political observers would be, if the parliamentary system or parliamentary sovereignty takes precedence tomorrow, or who benefits and what and why? And I think that's what is going on in people's minds.
It wouldn't be the first time we are getting into a parliamentary system, would it? Because I think in 1980, elections that brought in the second government of Dr. Milton Obote, it was more or less a parliamentary system, right?
Yeah, but you see, democracy is not so rigid that it is cut close. So the question is, what is the problem that is being chewed at this time that requires a parliamentary system? Why do we think that a pure parliamentary system is the best form of governance? Why not even an alternative or a new thing? There's nothing wrong with reforms being put on the table and discussed. The challenge is the intention. 2, when such political games begin, people become suspicious that they could be a diversion from something stronger passing under the bridge. So, for those who are championing those ideas, I think it's okay to be given a table, but they need to explain to us far better and far now, because it's not clear what will be the difference when this comes and how it will deepen democracy and not actually increase democratic deficits.
Let me come to you, Mr. Godba Tumushabe. You are a policy analyst. You are a lecturer of the School of Law. You put on many hats. I wonder what you make of these propositions that so far we are hearing allegedly from the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, who will be hitting the ground to ask people to seek their opinions on the propositions of changing our democracy from presidential to parliamentary democracy. Do you doubt the motivation?
I'm actually shocked that you are saying that they are being brought. Because you can only say that if you haven't been living in this country. I've invested quite some time over the last couple of years to basically to look at the constitutional amendments as they have unfolded over time, and I have a publication that is coming up very soon, looking at all those amendments. But Patrick, if you give me a minute, I will just read for you what I wrote in 2021.
Okay.
This is a paper called Uganda's Political Transition Scenarios to 2026 and Beyond. So my colleague and I wrote and said, secondly, because we're talking about there are two major amendments that Museveni would be pursuing in this term. I'm still suspecting that even the other one will come, which is on land, because normally he uses land to distract the population from concentrating. But essentially, we said it is envisaged that as part of managing the political transition and succession process, Museveni will engineer a carefully orchestrated plan to change the system of government from presidential to parliamentary system, thereby abolishing the universal adult suffrage for presidential elections. The unprecedented violence unleashed on the citizens to secure a constitutional amendment to remove age limit and legalize his running for presidency in 2021, the effort he invested in defeating the former Speaker of Parliament, Rebecca Kadaga, and installing a deeply loyal squad of leaders comprised of the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, and appointment of a cadre of leader of opposition, leader of government business, all point to how serious and personally he views the business of the 11th Parliament. So in other words, this is something that he started doing from 2021, and when people have been even arguing about Museveni massaging Anita Mong with her clear corruption and plunder in Parliament, I think that he has been preparing.
We have a prophet in the making.
Yeah, he has
Prophet Godba saw this coming.
So basically, he has been preparing
and warned us about it.
He has been preparing for this, and I knew even from the time Mao was appointed Minister of Justice, I knew that was the main reason that he was being appointed Minister of Justice. Because if you are Museveni, really the best person to bring an amendment of this nature and essentially remove the power from citizens to elect their president is best brought by someone like Mao. So these are not Mao's proposals. These are really not his ideas. He's just a messenger boy.
So, but what would be the political? By the way, we have standing by online Senior Presidential Advisor, Mr. Moses Biarhanga. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm sure you've heard from both Godber and Professor Kareja. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. I only heard from Godber. I didn't hear from Kareja.
All right, but maybe you can let me ask your own opinion, and perhaps you can even tell us whether, because you are senior presidential advisor on political matters, the issue of constitutional amendments, are you super focused on that?
Well, not really. I heard what Godber is saying, but you see, this constitutional, the proposals, as I see them, I see most of them are non-starters for them to go through the full process from cabinet up to parliament. Take, for instance, how do you, the idea of saying that a woman member of parliament, they should only be in parliament for only 2 terms. It is focusing on the woman MP, but the idea of woman representation is above one single woman MP. Unless you're going to say you're going to bring term limits for all MPs, it is unfair. Say you have served only 2 terms as a lady. Let's look at the president, the late one about Rebecca Kadak. She has served for many terms, and people have been electing her. As there are many other ladies of that nature who have been in parliament for more than 1 term. The current speaker has served for more than I think her 2nd or 3rd term. Now you say you can only serve that, you can't serve more. You must get someone else. It doesn't work out. I don't see that a woman member of parliament within that house supporting that amendment to go through.
But what is your take on because these 2 gentlemen have actually not even gone yet to the issue of the women MPs of district women representative, but on the parliamentary democracy versus presidential democracy?
There is no way President Museveni, and I mean, if you ask me my view, that how do you weaken the power of because during the CA, those debates were there. Even during the Odoki Constitutional Commission, those debates were there. Should we go for a presidential universal election for the president or a parliamentary system? And the majority of views in Uganda were saying we need to elect our president directly, as opposed to a parliament electing the president. A president elected by parliament is very weak. You see how government systems in Europe, because in most of Europe they follow a parliamentary system. The prime ministers, anytime they are falling, the parliament says we have no confidence in you. Some of the reasons for confidence, the government falls. Do you want that to happen here in Uganda?
But why do you have to look at that as a weakness? That could also be a strength of democracy.
To me, it's a weakness. It could be a strength, but it's a weakness. And that's why Uganda went for what it is, what we have now during the CA process. That debate was there. It was a very strong, big debate. Look at the report of the Odoki Commission. It was Uganda expressed their views widely. If you want to consult them again, I can assure you, the majority of Ugandans will say we rather maintain electing our president directly as opposed to the small number of people, 400 or 500, like in our parliament, 500. We don't elect a president for the whole country, or even when those MPs have been elected. Such a system weakens. It has been working in Europe because Europe has a strong democratic background, but in other countries like America, they don't have it. They elect the president directly.
Mr. Moses Biarhanga, Professor Gerard Kareja, and Mr. Godber Tumushabe. Gentlemen, we're going to take a mega milk break. When we come back, let's look into the pros and cons of a parliamentary democracy. We'll be right back. Gentlemen, we are back on air. Gentlemen, we're back on air. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hot Seat. My name is Patrick Amara. In the studio, I have Professor Gerard Kareja, I have Mr. Godber Tumushabe, and online we have Mr. Moses Biarhanga. Now, earlier before we took a break, I posed the question. Let me begin with you, Professor Kareja. Even off air, we were wondering, we were exchanging here, and Godber was asking whether there's a need for even a constitutional amendment in regard to having a parliamentary democracy. But what would be the pros and cons of parliamentary democracy in our setting?
You see, for any type of democracy, there will be pros and cons if people choose a particular kind of democracy. But the question is, if you want to shift from where you are, you must demonstrate that which you are running away from, or that is going wrong.
And why?
And you want to cure. we've not heard that from Honorable Mao. Two, my personal persuasion actually is that, you know, when the Electoral Commission was coming up with its roadmap, it raised a few number of issues, which are basic. Government, please make sure that if you are going to create new constituencies, do it early. We need more money to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now, even before that, we have had judgments in court and other pronouncements on what Ugandans would wish to see different. So far, none of those questions is being answered. Honorable Mao is answering a question that has not been asked. So the question is, what exactly is he up to? And why? My own hunch is that actually the NRM as a regime would prefer to be considered to have had universal adult suffrage, and many people voted for it in huge numbers, and than parliamentary democracy where the president is elected by
members of parliament.
Members of parliament. They would rather do whatever they can to have their legitimacy, whether real or assumed, benched on universal adult suffrage. Because if you've been reading the mind of the president, these days he's preoccupied with mass line, mass. So he believes in masses. And you can't get masses by having high-level representative electoral colleges that bring parliamentary democracy. Two, I would rather have Honorable Mao do than tell us he's going to do. If there is a cabinet paper, let him present it on the cabinet forward agenda. If there is laws, let him present draft bills, and we deal with the text and we deal with the issue. I hope that it is not a diversion to delay the critical needs that need to be handled to have a free, fair, and credible election at the expense of an expectation of reforms. Previously, they put up allegedly a constitutional commission which never saw never saw the day. So I'm not persuaded that actually there is a deliberate effort to have reforms. I would be pleasantly surprised if that came to light.
Good, but you seem to be suspicious that they could be having a trick up their sleeve that is of no good.
No, it's not really a suspicion, Patrick. I think you have to have not to have lived in this country, not to know what goes on here. First of all, I think any discussion about merits and demerits of parliamentary versus presidential system is a no-brainer. It's completely irrelevant to our conditions. So in other words, and normally the media in this country gets just almost trapped into discussing non-issues, because as far as I'm concerned, there is no gap to cure. So we have a president. Actually, as Jared said, ours is a hybrid system. A serious government would be trying to perfect it. Make sure that the people's plebiscite is respected. The reforms would be, how do you strengthen the system that we have? Ensure a balance of power between the three arms of the government. But I mean, as a matter of fact, if you go back to 2005, that's how Museveni does all these maneuvers around the constitution. Normally, you will throw some guy there who comes up with an idea, and then the people start saying, no, this one is not serious, it's not going to be there. In fact, I suspect that this idea that Mao has been quoted proposing, it could even just come as a campaign tool. In other words, Mao says there are amendments, want to change the system of government, and then Museveni is the one who comes to, what is it, what do you call it?
To calm the situation.
To calm the situation. So in other words, people now come up, raise up in arms, we don't want to change the system, we want our power in terms of the vote. Then Museveni comes, and that's normal. These elderly leaders,
they want to look like fathers, the way, he calls himself a grandfather. Then he comes to calm you down and say, no, we can't allow the power of the people to be taken to parliament. But all this, as far as I'm concerned, is his scheme, because that's what he has done. Remember, for the age limit, he had a showdown with religious leaders. Some of it was very, very private, because when the religious leaders asked him about the proposal to remove age limit, he had told them that this were actually, it was even written that these were, he was not part of this, and these were people who they were spreading rumors. You remember that's what he said. Isn't he the one who deployed the military to beat up people and attack parliament to pass the amendment? So, and you see, when I hear Moses and we're talking about the changing the system of government, and Moses very quickly runs to the women, I know that those are the indications that actually this is, he probably even knows that it is their scheme, and probably he's trying to divert the discussion to the women terms rather than the real issue.
Moses is right here online.
Because this,
and if this is their scheme, we can speak about their scheme.
Because these issues, no. My job is to interpret all these people what they say.
I just want him to give the opportunity to reveal more about this.
The point is that, like now, the term of women, that's of no consequence at all. What do?
And they expect him to expose his secrets.
Even if these women were in parliament for 50 years, what can they change?
Those are what they call Lerako.
How can they? These women,
it's not the main meal.
Whether they were given term limits or whether they were there for, would they change anything in terms of your life?
Moses is online. Moses, the floor is yours, sir.
See, Patrick, you see, Godbada is a lawyer, so is Mao. If I'm not mistaken, to change I agree with what Jared said about the presidential system versus the parliamentary system. We don't need to change it. But if I'm not mistaken, I think changing from the presidential system to any other, you need a referendum. And I don't think Uganda is ready for a referendum today. Just change the constitution, one provision of the constitution. I mean, it doesn't make sense at all. And there's no political dividend you are trying to achieve by moving from the presidential system, which we have now, to a parliamentary system. I think Mao is having his ideas. He's good, he has ideas. In any case, if Mao was a good operator, if you want to bring a cabinet paper, you put cabinet first before you make it public. Now, he will go public before going into the cabinet. I don't know, the method of work is that. But anyway, be it as it may, that idea of saying that we go president, we leave the current system of electing president directly by everybody to go to a president elected by parliament, the non-starter. Also, I think it requires amendment of the constitution, but if it doesn't require amendment of the constitution, it's not something Uganda needs to say.
But Professor Karija, there was about 2 weeks ago a debate on whether the leader of opposition should be appointed or elected by members of parliament. If they were to change the system, that means all the presidential candidates, because they will also run for a constituency, right? And in most cases, they would probably win at their constituency level. In other words, in such a situation, you would have Bobby Wine maybe in the House, you would have maybe Amuriat in the House, you'd have Mujisha Muntu in the House, and that would be a better House, I suppose. It depends on... let me tell you, the political ecosystem, regardless of whether we have a presidential or a parliamentary, whether we have consensual or adversarial politics, the bottom line is whether we are emphasizing procedure or substantive democracy. Now, to me, the bigger question is, for as long as parliament is representative, the leaders are fairly elected, questions of governance, rule of law are adhered to, as an individual, as a citizen, I'm less bothered whether we are parliamentary or presidential, or whether opposition candidates, leader of opposition is the leader of a dominant party. After all, in my own view, if you do an anatomy of any political party, we almost have none. Many of them are still organizations, but they're not yet institutions as political parties. And as they strive to become institutions built on values which are promoted, protected, and preserved, then we would have a strong multi-party dispensation. So I'm least convinced about all these different experiments being put on the table for as long as the fundamental issues about democracy are not addressed. Even in the current dispensation, if we could just raise the level of, say, debate in Parliament, the level of accountability, the level of oversight, the fight against corruption, and a number of such things, human rights observation, more autonomous and discretion with different entities, and increase the level of service delivery. To me, we would rather deal more with the substantive issues of democracy than the procedural issues of democracy, which I feel a bit uncomfortable that they are kind of a diversion from our focus on the substantive issues, which we need more to deal with.
Professor Jared Karija, Mr. Godbert Mushabe, and Mr. Moses Biarhanga. Gentlemen, we're going to take a mega mail. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hot Seat. My name is Patrick Kamara. My guest this evening in the studio, I have Professor Jared Karija and Mr. Godbert Mushabe, and joining us online is Senior Presidential Advisor Mr. Moses Biarhanga. Moses, you know what I'm hearing online, but also what I'm getting from your colleagues who are here in the studio, that perhaps what is happening is that Norbert Mao, these propositions are not his, that the NRM juggernaut is actually using him to test the waters. Would you take that? How would you respond to that? To see what is happening, like the proverbial saying of throwing a stone in the bush and see what is going to come out. Mr. Biarhanga, are you with us? It looks like we don't have Mr. Biarhanga online. My producer, Mr. Stephen Mbide, will be trying to reconnect to have Biarhanga back online. So, gentlemen, what do you think that, Professor, that this could be like the proverbial throwing of a stone into the bush, so that the NRM juggernaut looks at what is going to get out?
Beg your pardon?
Why would you think that these views or these propositions are actually not Mao's, or the government wants to use him to test the waters or even divert us?
Personally, maybe because I've not been able to get the articulation from him in a more particular way. I'm not yet persuaded about the substantive nature in which they will deepen democracy in this country, and the need for those reforms in preference against the already raised issues, for example, at a pragmatic level by the Electoral Commission and also by the courts of law. So the import of these reforms will be only seen when they actually are draft, either cabinet paper or memo or draft bills are discussed. Otherwise, it appears to me as an opinion poll.
Mr. Tumushabe, isn't it easier for President Yoweri Museveni, as he continues maybe to seek the mandate to lead Uganda, isn't it easier for him to change course and go for parliamentary democracy, maybe and that would be easier for him to land the presidency than the presidential democracy, because that means you have to be in each and every corner of the country. Here you just need a simple more than 50% or maybe 40% of the votes of members of parliament, and you're home and dry.
So let me put it this way.
Isn't it even cheaper?
Just a couple of points. One is that it is a misrepresentation for Moses to talk about what Mao is saying as if he's some NGO activist out there. Mao is a cabinet minister. He doesn't have the luxury of just going there in public and talking for as if he's some errant boy. So in other words, for us, from the public policy perspective, a minister speaks the mind or the thinking of what has been discussed in cabinet. Actually, even when there is no official paper, it means that this issue has already been discussed either in the general cabinet or in a more closed cabinet, because these are some of the things. So Moses should not mislead Ugandans and say Norbert Mao is some everyday person just talking about his opinions. Secondly, the reason we projected this scenario in 2021 is that increasingly Museveni has been feeling the pressure of the fatigue of the citizens. You know the elections, the way they have happened. In 2016, the violence that accompanied the elections, both the campaigns and the post-elections announcement, where he basically instituted the coup. When you see when you saw what happened in Kampala, that was a military coup. It was not an election. In 2017, when he amended the constitution to remove age limit, that was another coup, where he deployed the military across the country to beat people, to force meetings, to protect the meetings of people who were the MPs that were allegedly consulting. And then 2021, where even in spite of COVID, that people were really busy, were serious and pushing back. So Museveni knows that his stay in power now is no longer based on political goodwill of the citizens. I think it's just the main instruments that he uses is the military, the violence, and the money. Those are the real instruments. So in 2021, we're arguing that as the regime becomes more besieged, the population, because there's absolute fatigue. It's all over the place. You have to be numb not to see it. As the regime becomes fatigued, and the population, the resistance against the Raif presidency and his monarchy deepens, you are going to have to fall back. If you read the paper, that's basically what our argument. So Museveni is going to try to retreat, and therefore, what is happening is that he's going to be able to test whether it is possible to pull off this system where he can just have a group of MPs to be able to determine who the president is. If he achieves that, he can be able to achieve his Raif presidency project without the kind of violence that he will, and the money that he will need to be able to run a general election. But secondly, and probably most important, as he tries to make his son succeed him, or anybody of his choice, that is the best pathway that he has. That even if he wanted, given the fact that he controls the pass, the public pass, he controls the military and all the security agencies, he can even ask you, Patrick, come on and say, I want you to be the president, and he will go and buy the number of MPs he needs to be able to come and elect you a president. That's basically the scenario that we painted.
But also that parliament can also be bought by any other person with a higher price. And also
right now in this country, there's nobody else who has the...
Not necessarily in this country.
No. Yes, so that's... But you can have the money, but you will not have the military and the security to be able to complete that package.
I don't know if Mr. Mobiaranga, is he still online? Okay, it looks like he's not online. But, I know Moses Biarhanga wouldn't believe that you think the president has lost the goodwill of the people. I'm sure.
No, he doesn't have to agree. This is my opinion. So he doesn't have to agree.
Professor Karija, knowing, Norbert Mao is an astute politician. He's an accomplished guy. He's an intelligent...
I also describe astute politician. What you describe it. What does that mean?
That he, from his early years, Guild President Makerere University, a very good dynamic member of parliament, a very good LOCFF chairperson, Director General.
Sorry, Patrick, the people have already said, okay, if Museveni of 1986 met the one of today, what would be the showdown? If the Mao of 1990 who was my guild president, met Mao of today. Of course, these are two different guys. You have to be, you can't be sure whether they would not fight each other.
Yeah, but
so when you say astute politician,
even you guys at one point you were critical. At one point you were in the armpits of NRM. You're cadres at one point, and somebody I think was even doing him chaka. Please. At one point you're a bigger supporter of President Museveni.
Gerard was a cadre of NRM. Me, I was a Musevenist.
Yes,
and these are two different things.
And are you still a Musevenist?
No.
So that happens.
No. Yeah?
That happens.
No. The astuteness is what I'm disputing.
Well, are you not astute in your own way? I would think we have reconnected. Let
the cadre.
Okay, let me have senior presidential advisor, because I'm sure he heard you say that maybe he has lost the goodwill of the people, and I'm sure Moses is going to say no. You take Moses.
Oh, I lost the goodwill of the people. I didn't hear that.
The president is no longer has the goodwill of the people like you, so you have to come with all these means to.
Whoever has such a thinking that's the dreaming and wishful thinking. I can assure you, President Museveni and NRM will get more votes in the next election than any other before. So that I can assure you as a strategist, and I know our strategy. So anybody thinking that the President Museveni is running out from the people going to be elected by Parliament, that's their dreaming.
So actually now you have told us he's running for presidency 2026 and beyond, right?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised.
You already said it. Moses, you was not sure. That's, it slipped off, but that's a fact. However, Professor Kareja, Norbert Mao.
For that, Patrick.
Yes.
I don't see any reason why anyone would be running away from the presidential system we have now and trying the parliamentary. So, as I said earlier, the parliamentary system gives a weak executive which can be withdrawn at any one moment in time. But also, in where it happens, it gives the chief executive powers to dissolve parliament. So are you also going to have such an amendment? That the president or the prime minister, whatever name you call it, the chief executive to be able to dissolve parliament as and when they think so.
Okay, in the interest of time, let me go for a break, and so when we come back, let's look into those issues. And remember, Moses, Godba was telling you, who the person bringing these propositions is not a civil society activist. He's a cabinet minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. So whatever he's doing it on behalf of the president. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the hot seat. Professor Kareja, earlier I was trying to form a question, but Godba kept on poking at me, and then somehow it got off the question.
I need to.
You constantly poking.
I don't want you to divert us also.
But I was talking about the character and the man that we know, Norbert Mao. He's a politician of his own measure. Some, with respect, I suppose. Do you think the thing he's doing now is being forced, or you think does he believe in this, or what? Considering, I remember when we were young, and he kept on telling us, he was calling us the UB40s, that the Ugandans below 40, that it was our time. I think now you must have gone to UB60s, because I'm sure he's 50 and plus. But you think at one point he could be on a joystick?
I couldn't know. I wouldn't know whether he has been sent or it is on his own volition. But what I can read is that he knows that it pleases the principal. And let me tell you, in a not so distant future, President Yoweri Museveni will come and make his pronouncements on these ideas, either denouncing them or picking a few of them. That's why I say that in my view, it is kind of an opinion poll. To pick what comes out. Two, yes. Given who Norbert Mao is, we have seen him for reforms. At one time he was for the New Deal, then for the Uganda we want, and so on and so forth. He knows how to read the top. And I have no doubt that in his own estimation he knows that the president is aware of what he's doing, and he's doing it for his for the benefit of the president. Unlike Semugere, who kept quiet, and whenever he joined the government, he did something. Honorable Mao was telling us what he's going to do and what he's doing, and yet we have not seen it being done. That's why I have a challenge. Then two, I want to have a divergent view on the question of whether the president is likely to support parliamentary democracy. Of recent, he's so preoccupied with masses, and he has said mass line. President Yoweri Museveni and his ilk are those that want to show that their legitimacy is from the popular vote. In my own estimation, he would rather do whatever it takes to ensure that he has been voted by Uganda through universal adult suffrage than through an electoral college. He would be the last person to go for that because he believes in masses and he's convinced that he's in a mass party, that he's looking at the mass line, doing things for the masses, and therefore the masses are endeared to him. So for Honorable Mao, I think maybe it is too early to judge whether what he's doing is by remote or by his own volition. But for me, I'm not yet convinced about the need, and I'm not convinced about the extent to which they deepen substantive democracy in this country. If we were to have reforms, let them have them in a more structured and systematic manner, not pronouncements from a minister without the necessary critical steps.
Okay, Godbar, as we move to 2026, in my view, it looks like President Yoweri Museveni must be in good spirits now, because people who would be opposition, they seem to be in disarray. The opposition is falling on its own sword.
Well, I don't think that, because you said, Patrick, the problem that many of us commentators and analysts make is to think that the opposition to Museveni are people who are leading political parties like Bobby Wine or Chiza Besigye or Patrick Amuriat or General Muntu. I think that's a misunderstanding of the current situation that we are in. If you go back to 2010-2011, and you look at the Free and Fair Elections campaign, you look at the Tojikwatako campaign, you look at the People Power movement, the opposition to Museveni is opposition by Ugandans. These are Ugandans, regular persons, everyday persons. You'll find them in political parties, you'll find them in civil society, you'll find them in business. The guys who walked away, who walked from Museveni's meeting in Kororo, those are the opposition. You'll find them in the churches, in the different institutions. So when you say the opposition is like scattered, you reduce the nature of the problem that we have to just some political guys contesting with Museveni. So secondly, I believe I agree with Gerard that Museveni would want really universal adult suffrage, because every autocrat, every authoritarian leader around the world, they want to give the impression that they are popular, so they organize elections, which they rig and announce themselves and become the president. So in other words, in the absence of that citizen will, the guy has to keep on saying, I am popular because I was elected. Thirdly, the right now, President Museveni's regime has no capacity to even to deal with reforms, because all the reforms that they have attempted are reforms which have either been to make him a life president or to give him more power. There are no reforms that have been made over the last almost now 25 years of the Constitution that are for citizens. Everything has been about Museveni. So whatever discussions you see can only be about Museveni, because an ordinary person, a mother in your village in Kenya,
in Ngezi,
Nchenjojo, a mother who is pregnant, or a kid who is in school there, that has nothing to do with the system of government. They want a government that works, whether it is parliamentary, whether it is it's presidential. That's not the immediate problem that they are dealing with. They want a process, an election process, where people can freely campaign, citizens can mobilize for their political candidates. They can vote. Their votes are counted and announced and respected. That's what they would be looking for. But for now, you have a regime that is focused on how do you ensure that Museveni's life presidency project continues and probably transforms into a monarch.
All right. Gentlemen, in the interest of time, let me just give each one of you a minute to give us your concluding remarks. I'm beginning with you, Professor Gerard Kareja.
I think that given the time left to the next election, we're not going to see any substantive electoral reform or constitutional reform, in my view. We're going to have debates here and there, but what we're likely to see maybe is even the increase of constituencies and so forth. Two, the level of civic virtue and civic awareness, I think, is the most need that we have now than anything else. And may the good Lord have mercy upon us so that we can have a strong civic virtue,
civic competence,
and civic competence.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Goodbert Tumshabi, what's going to be your concluding remark tonight?
I was here around 2004, 3, during the amendment to remove term limits. The person who managed that project to remove term limits was a colleague of Mao, actually, let me put it that way. It is going to be very, very bad for Mao to be the one who leads any process of whatever nature that could result into Ugandans losing their power under Article 1 of the Constitution. That will really go down in history as an infamy on his part.
You said the other one was his friend?
Yeah.
Birds of the same feather.
Absolutely.
Mr. Goodbert Tumshabi, I want to thank you so much. Professor Gerard Kareja, I want to bless Uganda.